Stay with me. Not tonight, not this one. Muffled tones, narrowing pressure. This is tamponade. Order the ultrasound.
You're the night nurse. You sure?
Order it.
Step back, please. We do this by the book. Cardiothoracic is coming.
No time. He arrests in that elevator.
Team's 20 minutes out. You are not authorized. Touch that needle, I'll have your license. Step back.
Get the general's father on the phone. Then get out of my way.
2 fingers on a wrist in the blue dark, and Dana Reyes already knew the truth before the monitor did. The room was quiet the way rooms get at 3 in the morning, when the machines hum low and the hallway lights are dimmed to the color of old ice. She stood at the bedside of a man whose chart said stable, and she felt something the chart did not know. A pulse that climbed too fast and pushed too soft. A body starting to drown from the inside without spilling a single drop. Nobody had asked her to be there. She was just the night nurse making rounds, the woman most of that hospital walked past without seeing. But her fingers had held dying men on floors of steel and sand, and they remembered things her mouth was not allowed to say. She looked at the sleeping face and thought, not tonight. Not this one. Her name was Dana Reyes, and at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, she was known as a good nurse and nothing more. 38 years old, steady hands, quiet, the kind who charted neatly and never made noise at the station. Doctors liked her because she never made them feel small. Administrators liked her because she never made them fill out forms. None of them knew the rest of her, and she had spent 11 years making sure it stayed that way. Before the badge and the soft-soled shoes, there had been a different Dana. A Navy corpsman with a trident, earned in water most people would drown in, running toward the sound that everyone else ran from. She had knelt in places that had no name on any map and put her hands to work, keeping lives from slipping away. She had learned the kind of medicine they do not teach in clean rooms with good light, the kind you do with what you have, when the helicopter is 40 minutes out and the man on the ground has 4. She did not talk about it. She had a reason. His name was Cole, a boy from Ohio with a laugh too big for his chest, and one bad afternoon she had held his hand while the light went out of him, and she had felt the exact moment his fingers stopped holding back. That was the thing nobody warned you about. Not the blood. The way a hand goes from gripping to simply being held. Warm, then only warm because your own hand is warm, then not. She had come home and hung up the uniform and told herself the same soft lie every day since, that she had done enough, that she could put down the weight now, that she was allowed to just be a nurse, to check boxes and pass pills and go home to a small apartment where nothing bled. The lie held for 11 years. It held right up until the wrist in the blue dark. She did the thing she was not supposed to do first. She listened. She pulled her stethoscope and set it to his chest, and the heart sounds came back to her muffled, distant, like a fist knocking from behind a closed door. Once, she frowned. Twice, moving the bell a hair's width. The knocking was farther away than it should be, wrapped in something that did not belong there. The third listen was the one that turned the world a different color, because on the third listen she was no longer standing in a quiet ward in Maryland. She was somewhere loud and young, and every lesson she had been taught since screamed that a heart wrapped in that kind of silence was a heart being slowly squeezed to death by its own blood, filling the sack around it, drop by drop, until there was no room left to beat. Cardiac tamponade. She knew it the way you know your own name in the dark. The man in the bed was Captain Aaron Vance, 31, admitted 2 days earlier after a training rollover, blunt chest trauma, monitored and cleared and quietly forgotten in a step-down room because the scans had looked fine and the paperwork had moved on. Charming, the day nurse had written, cracks jokes, deflects. He had smiled at Dana that afternoon and told her he was fine, absolutely fine, and could he please go home. He had his father's jaw and a way of making everyone believe him. He was not fine. He was hours, maybe less, from dying in a bed with a green light glowing steady above his head that said everything was normal. Dana hit the call button and kept her voice flat, because panic is a thing that spreads, and she had learned long ago not to be its first carrier. She needed a physician. She needed an ultrasound. She needed someone with the authority to do the things she could already see needed doing, because she had done it herself in the field with a spinal needle and a prayer. And it was the one procedure that, here, inside these clean and careful walls, a nurse was absolutely forbidden to perform. The resident came, rumpled and slow, and Dana laid it out in 6 clean sentences. Muffled tones, narrowing pressure, climbing rate, rising neck veins, the whole quiet catastrophe. She asked for a bedside ultrasound, and she watched the young doctor's face do the thing she had seen 100 times. The small recalculation, the glance at her badge that said nurse and not the letters that came after doctor. He ordered the scan, that much at least. And when the probe went down and the gray image bloomed on the little screen, there it was for anyone to see. A rim of fluid crushing the heart into a small, frantic, failing thing, squeezed smaller with every beat. The numbers on the monitor finally began to tell the truth. Pressure sliding, heart rate racing to make up for what the heart could no longer complete. The green light was not green anymore. And that was the moment Mitchell Harris arrived. Harris was the hospital administrator, and he had the gift of appearing wherever a decision was about to be made that might land on a form with his name at the bottom. He was not a cruel man, exactly. He was a careful one, and careful men can do more damage than cruel ones because they always believe they are being reasonable. He came into the room in a pressed shirt at 3 in the morning because a captain named Vance was the son of a general named Vance, and a general's son could not be allowed to have anything happen to him that a lawyer might later name. He took one look at the screen and one look at Dana standing too close to the bed, and he put his hand on her arm. "Step back, please," he said. "Quiet, reasonable. We're going to do this by the book. We're calling the cardiothoracic team. They'll take him up to the cath lab." "There's no time to move him," Dana said. "There's a protocol. He'll arrest in the elevator." Harris's fingers tightened, just slightly, on her arm. And in the room, the pitch of everything seemed to drop, the alarms lowering into that long, steady wail that means a heart is no longer asking for help, but announcing an ending. "The team is 20 minutes out," the resident said, and his voice cracked on the number. 20 minutes. Dana looked at the captain's face, gone the gray of wet ash now, lips going pale, and she felt the old certainty settle into her hands the way it always had, quiet and complete. 20 minutes was 4 times too long. She had a man in front of her whose heart was being strangled by fluid pressing in from all sides, and she knew exactly how to relieve it, and every person with more letters after their name than her was either 40 minutes away or standing here telling her to wait. "Get me a pericardiocentesis tray," she said. The resident stared. "You can't. Get me the tray." Harris stepped between her and the bed. "Nurse Reyes, you are not authorized to perform an invasive cardiac procedure. Do you understand what you're saying? You touch that needle and I will have your license. I will have this hospital's name in a lawsuit. Step back." There it was, the whole of her careful 11 years laid out in front of her like a road she could still choose. Step back. Keep the badge. Keep the small apartment where nothing bled. Let the protocol do its slow, clean work, and write in her notes that she had raised the concern, that she had followed the chain, that it was not her fault, and go home and hold her own warm hands together and know exactly what she had let happen. She looked down at Aaron Vance. His eyes had come half open, and they found hers, and there was nothing charming left in them. Just the animal question every dying man asks without words. "Are you going to leave me?" Dana thought of a boy from Ohio and a hand that went from gripping to only being held. She reached past Harris and picked up the ultrasound probe herself, and with her other hand, she pulled a fresh pair of gloves from the box on the wall. The gloves snapped on with a sound like a small, final door closing. "Someone get the general's son's father on the phone," she said, calm as still water, "and then get out of my way." What happened next took 90 seconds and would be argued about for months, though Dana did not know that yet and would not have cared. She had no time for a full sterile field. She had the ultrasound, and she had her hands, and she had a memory older than every rule in that building. She swabbed the skin below the breastbone, the antiseptic sharp and cold and clean in her nose, a smell more familiar to her than her own kitchen. She set the probe and found the angle, the exact shallow angle up and toward the left shoulder that she had learned from a Navy doctor on the worst day of her life, the one who had said, "You aim for where the man keeps his courage." She did not look at Harris. She did not look at the resident. She watched the screen, and she watched the needle, and she let her breath go slow and long the way she had been taught in cold water years ago, and she advanced the needle a hair at a time, and on the screen she saw the tip reach the space where it needed to be. Then she drew back the plunger, and on the monitor above the bed the numbers began, all at once, to climb back toward life. The heart, given room, began to beat like a heart again. Aaron Vance took a breath that filled his whole chest, the first real one in 2 days, and color came back into his face in a slow wave, and his half-open eyes came fully open and fixed on the ceiling with the amazed expression of a man who has just been told he does not have to die tonight after all. The room was silent except for the monitor, counting out a rhythm that was steady now, and strong, and real. Dana held the syringe and did not move for a moment. Then she looked up, and Mitchell Harris was standing by the wall with his phone already at his ear, and he was not looking at the patient he had just watched come back from the edge. He was looking at her, and he was calling security. "I want her escorted off the floor," Harris said into the phone, and his voice was shaking now, whether from fear or fury even he could not have said. "Right now, and get legal out of bed." They came for her within minutes. 2 officers, apologetic, young, unwilling to meet her eyes. She stripped off her gloves and dropped them in the bin, and she did not resist, and she did not argue. She had learned long ago that dignity is not something you shout. It is something you keep by being quiet when everyone expects noise. She let them walk her out past the nurses' station where the whole night shift had gone still, past faces she knew, past a young nurse named Priya who was crying without seeming to know it. She kept her back straight. On the way out, she looked once through the glass at Captain Aaron Vance, breathing, pink, alive, and she thought, all right then, whatever this costs. They put her in the small windowless break room off the administrative wing to wait, because you cannot exactly put a nurse in a holding room inside her own hospital, and they did not know what else to do with her. The break room smelled of burned coffee and floor cleaner. There was a pot on the warmer that had been there since the evening, and when Dana finally poured a cup to have something warm to hold, the coffee came out with a thin gray skin on top, cold in the center though the pot was still hot. She drank it anyway. She had drunk worse in worse places. From her scrub pocket she took the folded piece of paper she had been carrying for 3 weeks without ever quite deciding to hand it in. Her resignation, written on a bad night, when she had watched a family lose someone and gone home thinking she was not strong enough to keep standing this close to the edge. She smoothed it flat on the little table and did not read it again. It did not matter now. They were going to take everything anyway. The badge, the license, the small clean life. She had known that when the gloves snapped on. If you have ever felt invisible in the very place you gave your whole heart to, then you already know something about Dana Reyes. And I think you already know why I wanted to tell you her story. Stay with me. There is only a little way left to go, and the best of it is still coming. Down the hall, in a corner office, Mitchell Harris was building his case. He had the incident report open. He had the words unauthorized and invasive and liability lined up like soldiers. He had a general's son alive in a bed upstairs, which should have been the whole point, but had somehow become, in Harris's careful mind, an inconvenient detail beside the size of the rule that had been broken. He was drafting the sentence that would end her career when the phone on his desk rang. Not his cell. The desk line, the one with the number almost nobody had. He picked it up with his practiced administrator's voice, smooth and sorry, ready to explain, ready to reassure. and a voice came down the line that made him sit up straight in a way his body did before his mind understood why. It was a voice used to being obeyed across oceans. It identified itself, and then it identified where it was calling from, and Mitchell Harris felt the pressed shirt go cold against his back. The Pentagon. The voice belonged to General Robert Vance. He had been reached before dawn by a resident who had followed one clear instruction from a nurse before she was walked off the floor. Somebody get the general's son's father on the phone. The general had been told two things in a single sentence: that his son had nearly died, and that a night nurse had saved him and been escorted off the floor for it. He had not slept since. He was on his way. And he was calling ahead to make one thing very clear. "You will not process one piece of paper against that woman," the general said, "until I am standing in that building. Do you understand me?" Harris understood. General Robert Vance arrived at Walter Reed as the sky outside was going from black to the gray of early morning. He was a two-star general, and he came in his uniform, and he came fast, and men who had never met him stood up when he passed, because some kinds of authority do not need an introduction. But he did not go to the administrator's office first. He did not go to legal. He went upstairs to a step-down room, and he stood in the doorway and looked at his son breathing in a bed, pink and alive, and grumbling that he was fine, absolutely fine. Could he please go home? And the general, who had buried friends and sent other men's sons home under folded flags, put one hand flat against the doorframe to hold himself up. Then he asked one question: "Where is she?" They brought him to the break room, and here is a small thing that Dana would remember longer than any of the rest of it. When the general came in, he did not fill the doorway and bark. He looked at the room, at the burned coffee and the hard little chairs, and he pulled one of those chairs out, a chair that was somehow too small for a man of his bearing and his rank, and he sat down across the table from her, so that they were at the same height, eye to eye. He was not wearing his general's face. He was wearing his father's. On the table between them, when he set down his hand, Dana saw a wedding ring worn thin, and she understood without being told that the woman who had put it there was gone, and that the man in the bed upstairs was the only thing in the world this general had left. "They tell me you weren't authorized," he said quietly. "No, sir, I wasn't." "They tell me you did it anyway." "Yes, sir." He was silent a long moment. Then, "Where did you learn it?" And Dana Reyes, who had kept her secret for 11 years, looked at the father of the man she had saved and told him the truth. About the water, and the trident, and the sand, and the doctor who said you aim for where the man keeps his courage. About a boy from Ohio named Cole. About the hand that had gone from gripping to only being held, and how she had promised herself, somewhere she had never said out loud, that she would never again stand close enough to feel that happen and choose to do nothing. When she finished, the general did not speak for a while. When he did, his voice was not quite steady. Mitchell Harris chose that moment to knock and enter, papers in his hand, the incident report, the words all lined up. He began to explain about protocol and liability and the very serious matter of an unauthorized procedure. General Vance stood up. He turned to Harris, and he let the administrator finish, and then he said just one thing. "This woman saved my son's life with her own two hands, and you put her in a room and called security." He let that sit. "You will restore her position this morning. You will note in her file that she acted correctly, and you will spend the rest of your career grateful that people like her do not think the way that you do." Then the general did something that the men in that building would talk about for the rest of their lives. He turned back to Dana Reyes, night nurse, former corpsman, 38 years old, and he came to attention, and he raised his hand in a slow, deliberate salute. A two-star general does not salute a nurse. He does not salute someone he does not respect, and in 30 years he had never once given it away for less than it was worth. He gave it to her. "Thank you," he said. "For my son." Dana stood. "Because you stand for that." And she did not cry, though it was close. She simply inclined her head and kept her back straight and let the moment be what it was. It could have made her famous. It did not, really. She did not want it to. When the offers came, The interviews, the promotions, dangled like bright fish. She turned most of them down and went back to the night shift, to the same station, the same soft shoes, the same badge that said only her name and the 2 letters RN, because those, she had decided, were the letters that mattered. Some weeks later, the young nurse named Priya, the one who had cried, found Dana at the station near the end of a quiet shift and asked her, shyly, how she had known. How she had been so sure, with the chart saying stable and everyone saying wait. Dana thought about it. Then she tapped the badge on her chest, the plain one, the 2 letters. People see these letters and think they know the whole of you, she said. You make the letters mean something, then it doesn't matter what they think. And she went back to her rounds, out into the blue dark of the ward, where somewhere a wrist was waiting for 2 fingers that would know the truth before the machines did. These stories are made with love. If this one stayed with you, and if you believe the quiet ones deserve to be seen, then subscribe and stay a while. That is all I ask.